In this video, you're going to learn the structure of Xero's default chart of accounts, the layout of the chart of accounts screen, how to add new codes, and editing existing codes. Every Xero organization comes with a default chart of accounts. So if you signed up for your Xero organization, your organization would have come with the Xero default chart of accounts. If, however, your accountant signed up to Xero on your behalf, it is likely they added their own chart of accounts to your Xero. But let's focus on the default Xero chart of accounts. To get to the chart of accounts screen, we go to Accounting, Chart of Accounts. It is structured as follows. This screen shows all of your account codes. They are also listed in tabs according to their type here. At the top of the overall list are your bank accounts. These are the bank accounts added to your Xero. Next comes revenue, with a 3-digit code starting with a 2, and a title for the code, and a description of what the code is for. Then we have expenses, subcategorized by type, direct costs, overheads, and expense. Again, they have a 3-digit code with a title for the code and the description. Direct costs start with a 3. Overheads and expenses start with a 4. Then there's assets, again with a 3-digit code. Current assets start with a 6, and fixed assets start with a 7. Then there's liabilities. Current liabilities start with an 8, non-current liabilities start with a 9. Lastly, equity, which also starts with a 9, but are higher up in the 9s. They all have a type and a tax treatment. The type determines which higher category the accounts fall under, and in turn which report they appear on, the profit and loss or the balance sheet. Income and expenses go on the profit and loss, and assets, liabilities and equity go on the balance sheet. The tax treatment is set when the code is added and should follow tax and accounting rules. So you'll see most balance sheet codes don't have GST on them, but there are some exceptions. So Xero has followed tax and accounting rules when setting up these codes. Finally, we have a column called YTD, standing for year to date, and this is the balance of the account code for the current financial year. You'll notice a padlock sign on the left-hand side by some of the codes. This indicates codes that are called system accounts that cannot be archived or deleted, and some of which you can't even code transactions to. For example, you can't code to this 800 accounts payable code, and neither can you delete it. You can code to this 416 depreciation code, but you can't delete or archive it. These system accounts are for key accounting purposes or are crucial to Xero's background workings, which is why you can't delete or archive them. If the padlock has a circular arrow, these are locked accounts and cannot be archived because they are being used by a rule, such as a bank rule or a repeating transaction. Whilst you can archive or delete account codes, I don't recommend doing this without first consulting your bookkeeper or accountant. If there are codes you don't use or you think are duplicates, it is best for your bookkeeper or accountant to deal with these. Chances are the default chart of accounts won't have all the codes that you need for your particular business. For example, there is only one sales code, but chances are you have multiple sales sources and will want to code transactions to different sales codes so that you can get a more detailed and granular picture of your revenue. So let's look at adding a new sales account code now. So we click this plus Add Account button, and the first thing we are asked for is the account type. I want to add a revenue code, so I can start typing it in here, or I can scroll the list to find the right type. Next comes the code. You have to use a code that hasn't already been taken, so you want to have a look first and code things as close to their current numbers. So if you're adding a sales code, make sure it starts with a 2. And I'm going to go with 201 because our current sales code is 200. Then you need to give it a name. Let's imagine our company is a catering company and we want to create a sales code just for our catering for corporates. So I'm going to call this Sales Corporates. The description is optional but can help other users know what to use the account code for. So for this, I'm going to put revenue from corporate events. Next is the tax rate. You can choose from 15% GST on income, no GST, and 0 rated. I'm going to choose 15% GST on income. And then there are some optional choices here. One which you may want to tick is this Show on Dashboard Watch List, which will then display the code here on the dashboard where you can keep an eye on it if you use the Accounts Watch List feature. And now we've created a new code. Note, it's really important for reporting purposes and for your GST return to get the type and tax treatment of your account codes correct. So, if you want to add some account codes but aren't 100% sure what the type and tax treatment should be, get in touch or consult your accountant or bookkeeper. If the name of a chart of account code doesn't work for you, you can change it to something more meaningful by clicking into it and updating its name and description. So for example, I could change this broad sales code to Sales Weddings. So to edit a code, you click the name of it and it opens up in the edit mode. And here I can update the name. You can change the number, the tax rate, and so on, but I strongly advise consulting your bookkeeper or accountant before making any changes to codes. Also note that any updates you make to codes will be reflected on any reports you run dated before you made the change. I recommend printing out your chart of accounts and keeping it by your desk, highlighting the most common ones you'll use, and refer to it when you're coding until you learn what the codes are, which will naturally happen the more transactions you enter in Xero. To print the whole chart of accounts, click this Print PDF button, which will download a PDF version of it, and then you can print it. Alternatively, keep the PDF version on your desktop if you don't want to print it. And that is the Chart of Accounts screen. So by now, you should know how the Xero default Chart of Accounts is structured, the layout of the Chart of Accounts screen, and how to add a new code.